This is the third video for chapter 1, and in this video we're going to focus around what impacts the media. So in other words, we've discussed how the media impacts us and culture, our culture, but what influences the media? So there are two things we're going to discuss here. One is the role of money. Media industries are businesses. When somebody is working for a newspaper or somebody's the publisher of a newspaper, they don't get up every day and go cover the news just because they want to impact change or they feel altruistic. They may in fact want to impact change and they may be altruistic, but they also need to put food on their table. So media industries are businesses. We especially know this when we're talking about TV shows and things like that, but they're businesses. As such, they have to figure out how to make money. And the primary way they figured out how to make money through doing what they're doing is by making audiences products instead of consumers. I know we talk about in this class a lot about how we consume media as audiences, but when we're looking at a lot of the branches of the media, how do they make money? They don't make money by selling you their product for lots and lots of money. For example, when you go to buy a newspaper, it doesn't cost you $35 to buy that day's issue of the newspaper. But there's a lot of things that go into putting that newspaper. They hire all these people. There's the cost of the paper, there's the cost of printing it, of delivering it, all of that kind of stuff. So it certainly does not cost a paper just 25 cents to get the paper out. So how do they make their money? They make their money through having advertisements in the paper. And they sell these advertisements to companies or businesses by promising them that your eyeballs will see their ad. So essentially, they're making you and your eyes into the product. This is the same thing if we're talking about magazines. It's the same thing if we're talking about radio. This time they're selling your ears. So all of this is a way of making you not just a consumer, but a product. And that supplements the cost of those different media. Now, not every single medium uses this model to fund itself, and we'll talk more about that later. Okay, so the next thing that impacts the media is the role of technology. And the role of technology, basically, one thought about it is that there's technological determinism. And what this is saying is that machines drive change, and we essentially are powerless when it comes to shaping our culture in the face of whatever new technology is dropped into our culture. So I'll give you an example. There's an old movie, probably about 30 years old, called The Gods Must Be Crazy. And in this, in an Aboriginal culture that has no outside contact, all of a sudden a biplane comes by, drops a Coke bottle into their culture, and it's sort of a comedy, but this Coke bottle changes everything. So it's this idea in technological determinism that when a new technology gets developed and is a part of our culture, that even if we wanted to stop some of the changes, they're just a train full speed ahead, out of our control. All right. The other side of this is that people say this is not true at all, that the way we use new technology is what's important. We use technology to shape our culture however we choose. You may have heard this type of argument around guns. There are some people who say guns, have impacted our culture, and it's it's a force that brings with it all these things that are unstoppable. Or you might be in the camp that says guns don't kill people, people kill people. That we use the guns for good or for bad based on our own, choices. So let's look at one of the earliest examples of technological determinism, written language. So in the time before written language, when societies were oral and language had not yet, written language had not yet been developed, you might think of who had status in these cultures. So some of the things that you might include are the elders. They have these long memories that could convey the culture to us. It might be the storytellers, the people who could convey that culture in words in a way that was interesting or meaningful. You might think of the people in that culture who did things, so the shamans or other people in that culture who would pass on their knowledge from generation to generation. Those are the people who had status. In a literate society, so once we get written language, different people have status. You might ask yourself, who has status in a literate society? Well, I would say you are in school. You're getting educated because you want to have status in a literate society. So people who can read and write, for one thing. And it's interesting because in literate societies, there tends to be a little bit more mobility in being able to move from one status to another. All right, so that, literacy, having a written language rather, is a type of technological determinism, technological development that impacted our culture. The printing press is another, and we're going to be primarily talking about Gutenberg's printing press over here, but it's not the first printing press. We had the Chinese woodblock press, but you might ask yourself, why would the Chinese woodblock press not lead to massive change? Well, wood is less durable, and also blocks, if you carved something into it, you couldn't then rearrange it to make something new. You'd have to recarve something. But the Chinese also developed movable clay type. So we could have had, in the year 1000 AD, we could have had enormous changes had that type of printing press really propelled change. But clay, again, is not a super durable substance, so that still didn't completely make the changes that we're going to see later. In Korea, they had a Korean movable metal type, and that could have done the trick in 1200. But the intention of what the printing press could actually do wasn't quite there yet. It's not until 1446 that Johann Gutenberg has the idea of a movable metal type, and he prints a Bible. So I'll tell you more about him perhaps in class, or we may watch a video, but it's really at this moment where we start to see a huge change in society. And again, some people would say that this printing press was developed and the changes were unstoppable. So what kind of changes? First of all, literacy grows. People who didn't have a reason to be literate, now there's more written material out there that's printed for less money, and the need to have literacy begins to grow a little bit. The second thing is that we start to see all these new ideas out there. As we get written material more cheaply printed, it's more prevalent. So new ideas begin to get circulated. And this poses a challenge to those in power. So the crown and religious leaders. So the crown and the church start to get very challenged by the new ideas that are out there. We also start to see